is 1 o'clock on May 22nd, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the minutes for May 15th, which were submitted by Commissioner McHugh. Do we have a motion to adopt?
Yeah, the minute, yes, Mr. Chairman, the minutes were posted. I move that they be adopted.
Second?
Any questions, any corrections, issues? All in favor of adoption, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0. Next is administration. The first item, Commissioner Zuniga, is the executive search process.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've submitted a memo to the commissioners and to the procurement file recommending that we cancel the current solicitation for executive search firms and conduct a rebid or reissue the solicitation shortly thereafter. Let me just step back a little bit and have some background. We received two responses to our solicitation. We underwent what's called the phase one review purely for compliance with the forms and former submission that they were asked in the solicitation. Both firms were found to be responsive. Neither of the firms is disqualified or anything like that, there's language in the RFR. But my recommendation comes mainly or mostly from the fact that we did get two responses as opposed to three or more, which is normally found to be a minimum acceptable for the procurement of commodities and services. Canceling the solicitation is part of the procurement process options that we have as part of this procurement. My recommendation comes with additional procedures to conduct when we reissue this RFR. Those procedures include additional advertising, clarification relative to the fee structure.
What's the issue there?
We received a question after the question period was over, which we didn't respond because it's not appropriate. But the question was relative to the fee structure as to whether it included, we set a maximum fee and whether it included expenses or not. My recommendation is that, of course, we make that very clear. I thought it was clear, but there's two sections in the RFR that speak to that. That may have been the source of the confusion. So I make a suggestion that we clarify that unequivocally. And
So the expenses would be outside the cap.
outside of the cap, right. That was my intention when I wrote it. It wasn't clear because one section spoke about fees and another section spoke about expenses, and you could wonder whether they're synonyms or not. So additional direct solicitation is also a procedure that we could undertake, an enhanced procedure. That is, go to the 25 or so top executive search firms and email them directly on a blind copy so that it's widely distributed. We could include a number of contacts that we have, interested parties that have signed up for our public fora, et cetera, in that distribution as an enhanced procedure for advertising. So doing it this way would allow the two respondents to turn around and respond, be motivated to respond to the second solicitation, if we, in my opinion, if we cancel now and reissue again. Of course, this has some time implications. We will have lost a few days, if you will, between having to reissue and allow enough time to get more people interested. I to
I-
take any questions.
I'm wondering, Commissioner, if we could consider a interim step, which may be, since we have two candidates who are qualified, knowing as we do that the gaming community is not a large community, and many of the individuals are well-known, and knowing that we have our gaming consultants who have volunteered to assist us with this search and reach out to qualified candidates, I'm wondering if we could interview the two candidates who are qualified in the interest of saving time, moving the process along, and if, in fact, one of them is acceptable for our needs, we could consider taking that step before rebidding the interview process. I think, and I give them credit for responding properly, and I'm wondering if we're not discounting their abilities by not at least allowing them to interview before we start the process over again.
That's a very valid concern. I would mention a couple of things. If we go through the process of evaluating them and for whatever reason find that we're not entirely satisfied by their response or their qualifications, we would then be in a position of contemplating repeating at a later time. It's something that we have to weigh against the merits of having received only two responses rather than three. For background, I think, or I know that governments don't necessarily do a lot of these type of solicitations for executive search firms. So there's, it's been mostly the private sector who undertakes these. There may be firms out there that they just didn't know about this process. But the governor's office conducted a similar solicitation for an executive search firm for the two positions that were jointly nominated by the governor, the treasurer, and the attorney general. And in that response, they obtained four responses. And, they may have had more visibility of these. We modeled that solicitation, to a great degree, on that one, we had that available to us. So it's definitely just background.
It's my understanding that the candidates were solicited separately from the firm. Is that correct? The candidates that, in other words, getting back to my point about this being a small community
Yep.
and having the backdrop of consultants who know individuals very, very well and could get the information out there to qualified candidates. Again, I go back to my point that we could save time and it could possibly be one of the two firms who is very well qualified for the position.
Do we know anything about why we only got two?
Well, we did some outreach to some, Janice, our chief of staff, knows some people who know of these type of firms and made some inquiries, and relative only to the effect as to whether they knew that this solicitation was out there, and obtained a couple of responses that they didn't really. That's the genesis of, now this was not an exhaustive request for information. There may have been out there some firms that within reach that knew about it and decided not to respond. So, but this was more of a spot checking because that's what we had access to, and we gained some intelligence that at least a couple of firms didn't know that this was out there. One of those two firms thought that there was not enough response time.
There was not enough response?
Not enough response time when they saw it, even though you could argue as to whether. I want to stress that we complied with everything that's customary by the bidding regulations. The minimum, we had more than the minimum response time. We advertised in our website in Compass, which is appropriate for these type of solicitations. We could certainly, decide by a majority to go forward with the process with the two responses that we have. But at this point, I wanted to bring that up as for consideration of this commission because I think it's relevant and important.
We
Mr. Chairman.
anticipated that the total process would take a number of months between the time we put out the bid request for the search firm and the time we actually had somebody on board. This won't, if we rebid it, it won't add significantly to that amount of time, will it?
Not significantly. It does add time, though.
No, I understand
That's,
that, I understand that.
And,
But, I mean, everything's a cost-benefit analysis, right?
absolutely.
And if we got additional bidders, this being a critically important position that we need to fill, we'd have an opportunity to take a look at a full array of people with different skills and different approaches and select somebody whose approach we thought was most likely in a broad range of respondents to produce the best result. So, at the cost of a couple of weeks to get a greater array of choices is really what the choice is, I think, right?
Right. Now, I do want to speak a little bit about the point of a limited pool, which is I believe very important. I concur with that. There's what I understand about executive search firms, and this is just my general knowledge about this, is that they will serve two main purposes, which is to do a lot of the legwork in soliciting, sometimes cold calling potential candidates. But they also rely on a lot of the connections that they have by way of industry expertise. If you do some firms specialize in financial services and they have either done a lot of work in the financial industry and they leave to become part of an executive search firm and they have a lot of contacts and business associates and former, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a piece of this, of course, which Commissioner Cameron may be alluding to, that if there's certain search firms that they don't see themselves with those type of connections for the gaming industry, we may inherently have a limited pool of firms. Nonetheless, somebody else may see, well, we will be doing a lot of the legwork, could be complemented by our consultants, et cetera, and that may be a good outcome. I'm going to make the counter argument that there's also hospitality-related industry expertise that could also be very relevant. There could be some executive search firms with a lot of hospitality, leisure, et cetera, with those kinds of connections. So another piece that's important about executive search firm, in my opinion, is that they will also be able to ascertain some of the best candidates that may be good on paper, but may have an additional level of due diligence just by virtue of having done these for others. And that's again something that we would have to ascertain, and the best way to ascertain that is by going through the evaluation of having them come in and interview with one of us, or however that may be. So, by long way of saying that it's not a slam dunk either way.
I want to make a point that one of the things that I think has changed for us somewhat since the RFR was issued is that we've had some buy-in or willingness from our consultant partners to assist us with some of the initial hiring processes. I mean, and those are certainly people who I trust to know where the potential field of candidates will be, from what publications to advertise in. So I guess since the issuance of the RFR, my feelings about what a recruiting firm's responsibilities would be maybe have shifted somewhat, knowing that we have this expertise kind of at our disposal. I'm somewhat less reluctant to reissue the RFR based on some people saying, well, it's not the traditional avenue which we hear about in RFR. Certainly, we're not looking for CFOs or large general positions. I mean, this is a pretty defined spot, and I agree with your statement about, perhaps limiting their work to doing that kind of legwork, following up on the references, doing the outreach, vetting some candidates. But I guess I'm reluctant to reissue the RFR without talking to them, perhaps in partnership with our consultants, to say, is there a process whereby we can utilize your skills? I mean, they went through the hard work and process of completing all the paperwork, which through the phase 1 review they've been compliant with. I just think it'd be beneficial for us to have that initial discussion, perhaps.
With the bidders or with our gaming consultants?
I think with both, as part of an interview process.
Okay, so you're saying go ahead and open them up and open up the bids and see what we've got.
Begin the evaluation process.
Right.
Yeah, within the evaluation process. And again, it's, we're not looking for a CFO or a chief administrative officer. We're looking for a pretty defined set of skills, at least as we've reviewed in our executive director job profile.
We have consultants here. Should we ask them?
We could.
We can.
Do you want to come forward, Guy and Bob, and Guy Michael and Bob Carroll from Michael and Carroll?
I mean, as we look ahead, even your 16-week plan, there's a piece of this in terms of providing assistance and in not identifying and interviewing candidates. I guess my question would be whether that would also extend to our efforts to find an executive director.
We would certainly be willing to be helpful in that regard, yes. I think the points that have been made in concerning the limited pool of potential candidates is accurate. And the industry, as much as it's grown, is still kind of a fraternity in a lot of ways. And we do have contacts with a lot of the people who are presently in it, who would have the experience to be able to serve in that kind of a capacity. So we'd certainly be of assistance. We're not experts in recruitment, and to the extent that a recruiting firm would be able to do what they do, we could work along with them to assist in finding someone.
We've worked with enough gaming regulatory executives, to be able to assist you in terms of the qualifications as a general statement, and also the qualities of a good leader in that position, because it is an important position.
Is there also a piece of identifying industry publications? I mean, where
Oh, yeah.
We can
potential candidates would turn to and look
Yes.
for an
Yeah,
opportunity?
we can get you that. That's no problem.
Yeah, there are a number of, actually, there are probably too many, industry publications, and we can identify the ones that would be most important.
For candidates for the.
Yeah, the ones that
for
most people
executive
read,
director. I
right.
just want to make the distinction that what I was talking about relative to advertising would be that it would reach additional executive search firms,
Right.
respondents to our solicitation. Just want, I know you weren't.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to make that distinction for everybody.
Well, no, we would be able to identify industry publications where people in the industry would be able to be informed about the availability of this position. I mean, if executive search firms read other industry publications, I suppose they would see this as well, but it would be more helpful to identify people in the industry than it would to be able to identify search firms.
So I guess our question is, so we could feel confident that we could reach the right sources without totally relying on a search firm to do that for us? In other words, you could assist the search firm in making sure that this advertisement got to the right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's accurate.
But here's my concern, and that is with the concept of the limited group. I'm sure that there is a limited group of highly qualified gaming executives. And I'm sure that there are a number of avenues into that group. But if we start the search and it is important to look at that group. But if we start the search with that group in mind, there is a chance that we miss somebody with qualifications, though not gaming rooted, that ultimately would be the best for this undertaking. It is true time and time again in this mobile world that a successful leader from one industry goes to another, the automotive industry is an example, and does a very good job. And fills the subordinate positions with highly skilled people from the industry. And so I just wonder, in terms of the utility of a search firm, whether we don't forego or decrease the likelihood of finding that person if we don't open the search up again and get a greater pool of applicants who might be able to help us look in areas that we wouldn't otherwise look. And I think I favor doing that because the risk, the cost is a few additional weeks.
But we don't know that the search firms that were ambitious enough to read and apply appropriately in a timely manner could not do that for us unless we interview them.
No, you don't know until you don't know what you don't know. That's right. And the whole issue is a question of likelihoods, I think.
Yeah, I'm torn on it.
It was never our intention to say that we would work to the exclusion of a search firm. I mean, we would work in conjunction with a search firm.
I understood that.
And the search firm certainly would be able to expand the circle of people to contact. I just don't know if that.
Right.
Inclusive of non-gaming. I mean, if there's
Right.
professionals out there that would fit the bill from a, executive level experience point of view,
Right.
certainly they should be considered.
I'm torn because if we aren't satisfied with the firms, then we're gonna lose another week or two. You know, if we, however long that'll take, probably 2 weeks to, right. So should we bite the bullet and add 2 weeks on now, or should we run the risk of adding a total of 4 weeks? Which begins to become, two is not very material, a month begins to become material. So I kind of lean towards being safer than sorry, but.
Let me mention one thought, which I think is relevant relative to what Commissioner Stebbins was saying. We have all the discretion of coming back to them with to the two bidders, with a narrower scope, to say, we're gonna provide additional resources in the form of our gaming consultants who have knowledge of the industry, et cetera, et cetera. In that scenario, it would be our duty to open up a negotiation relative to the fee that they proposed. Because they proposed on a wider, if you will, scope that we are now narrowing. I just gonna, again, it would just be our duty to do that.
Couldn't we interview the two firms in a day? I'm not sure I see the 2-week delay.
Well, there would be at least 1 week of evaluation, and then, if the firms are local, yes, I don't know that they are, or that the groups or the people responding may want to travel, so that adds up, maybe, but
We'd have to.
I don't know, we'd have to schedule it and
Couldn't
see
possibly
what
be less than 1 week, because we couldn't decide until the next Tuesday meeting. We couldn't talk about it ourselves for at least 1 week.
Right.
Well, can we have our cake and eat it too? Can we open the proposals? How long is it gonna take to get another, to get the re-bid out? If we decided today to put it out, how long would it take?
It resets the clock to the advertising time, which for us started
No, but how long would it
20th?
take to start the RFP process going?
Oh,
How long, when
when we'll be
will
able
we
to
that?
publish again, you know, tomorrow, a couple of days, to reissue, to post it again in Compass. I would probably want to coordinate as well with periodicals. I'd recommend at least 2 periodicals, in addition to Compass and our website.
Right. But
They
could-
usually have, you know, a little bit of turnaround time.
Could we agree to start that process going and go ahead and open up the 2?
Well-
And if we decided we were satisfied with one of the 2, cancel the other one?
Well, I would advise against that. And there's a couple of reasons, there's a main reason, which is going through the evaluation process it commits us in a little bit in the way of letting it play through and make a decision. It's only fair to those who bid and want to be evaluated on their own merits. Now, if we undertake that process and we're not satisfied, then we have lost those additional weeks, the evaluating and interview process. But we've also lost 2 potential bidders, right? If we are not satisfied, then now we have 0. We're starting the process with no one. Now, if we cancel right now, and we signal to those 2 potential bidders that they should be able and hopefully willing to respond to the next solicitation. In other words, we would be looking for an additional or however many more bidders. You know what I mean? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Sort of.
How many weeks does this have to stay open for?
The minimum is 2 weeks. Last one, we did it for 20 days.
Okay, so if we got a bid out, if we got a new RFP out by the end of this week, say, then we're looking at a closing date 3 weeks hence.
Probably. Yep.
Right, okay.
Anybody else thoughts before we vote? No. So I guess we need, do we need we need a vote if we're gonna cancel?
Yeah.
What do we do? We have
I,
just a consensus here as to whether?
Well, I would make a motion with your permission
Okay.
to cancel and rebid the solicitation as outlined in my memo / recommendation.
Second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Maybe we ought to amend the motion, or at least have it understood
Be
that
very
the
clear.
new bid gets out by the end of the week, so that we have a timeline on where we're going.
Sure.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 I think reluctantly aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, first time. The ayes have it, 3-2.
Thank you.
Don't go away, folk. Well, we're gonna get to you pretty soon.
Go away for a
Go away
minute.
if you want to. All right, okay. Okay, additional hires, I guess just quickly updates. There's nothing really much to report. We have 2 levels. We have the junior level administrative assistants and office management kind of help. And I think Janice is in the process of interviewing people now, and Enrique and I are gonna finish interviewing probably the 5th candidate for the more senior person who's sort of substituting for the acting ED, but that's not quite right. But the more senior position we will have interviewed by the end of the day Thursday, I think 5 or 6 people. And we'll have something to you shortly after that. Anything else on that? On then 3C, the contract with Polaris, Commissioner Zuniga.
Yeah, thank you. I submitted a memorandum for you commissioners and the procurement file relative to memorializing the nature of the emergency contract of Ms. Schwartzman, who's doing business as Polaris Public Relations. It's here for your consideration. For this commission, for documentation purposes, her services were procured on an emergency basis, and we need to document that in the form of a contract. That contract option, an emergency contract, requires the business case, if you will, the reason, and a budget to be attached to that contract. And I've submitted this two-page memo to that effect. It describes the steps that took place prior to Mr. Crosby being named or appointed to the chairmanship of this commission, and the total budget for those.
I think it might make sense just for the, sort of for the public record to quickly explain
Sure.
the story, you know, just
Sure.
what did transpire, what you've got in the memo
Yes.
there, but just if quickly.
Sure. For shorthand, upon being told that he would be appointed chairman of the newly created Mass Gaming Commission back in December, Chairman Crosby made a determination that he would need assistance with somebody in the public relations arena to help him prepare a statement and also help him with multiple questions that he was likely to receive, again, relative to the public relations and media communications. He reached out to the governor's office as to whether it would be appropriate. A chief of staff responded that it would, and he reached out to Ms. Schwartzman for these services, who Ms. Schwartzman also coordinated with the governor's office relative to billing rates. She was communicated that because this was an emergency contract on a sole source basis, her rates would have to reflect a discount. And on that basis, she was also notified that the commission, once appointed in full, may decide to do any number of things. Hire another firm, conduct another RFR, hire some staff, etc. Ms. Schwartzman accepted all those terms, supplied the billing rate of $150 an hour, and has been working since December 17, I believe, on that ad hoc hourly basis. Those are that's the gist of the events that took place. That we in order to execute a contract, we also need a budget, and it's outlined here. There's a number of hours that have been incurred to date, additional hours for the rest of May, some hours estimated less than what's been before for June, in anticipation of a communications director coming on a full-time basis sometime early June. And that's submitted all here for your consideration. The total is a $75,000 commitment plus reasonable expenses,
Okay.
which would take us until June 30th of this year,
Right.
which is the end of our fiscal year.
Right, and she's talked about working a little, she and Elaine have talked about working together a little bit as the transition happens, and then after that, who knows what happens after that. Okay, do you want to move?
Yeah, I make a motion that this budget and commitment be accepted by this commission as a form of documentation of the procurement of her emergency contract.
Second?
Any further discussion? We did do also, it doesn't mention that, but we did have a background check done
Correct.
prior to
We
her
did. I should have mentioned that, right.
prior to her being retained. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. All right, the ayes have it, 5-0. Okay, Commissioner, Racing Commission status report.
Mr. Chair, as we pointed out last week, we filed emergency regulations with the Office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth on May 17th of this month. These regulations were adapted to provide for an orderly transition of the regulation of horse racing, parimutuel wagering, and simulcasting from the authority of the Mass State Racing Commission to the Mass Gaming Commission. These were effective on May 20th. Also, an interdepartmental service agreement with the Division of Professional Licensure was signed off on by Director Mark Kmetz and me on May 17th of this month, also effective May 20th. Just to reiterate the terms of that agreement, the daily track and laboratory operations, simulcasting, human resources, administrative functions, fiscal oversight, and enforcement and public safety responsibilities will remain with DPL until the conclusion of this racing season. As stated last week, the Mass Gaming Commission, we are responsible for all adjudicatory functions, policy, recommendations, and approvals until next year, when we will be prepared to take all of those functions. In addition, our racing consultant, Ann Ullman, will be on board this week, Wednesday and Thursday, to begin her work for the commission. I will be attending a series of meetings with Ms. Ullman tomorrow at DPL, with DPL and State Racing Commission employees. And on Thursday, we'll be visiting Suffolk Downs and Plain Ridge Race Course to observe the operations and meet the employees. So that concludes my update for this week.
Great. Any questions?
I think it's helpful to point out that not only the work of Commissioner Cameron, but Commissioner Zuniga and Commissioner McHugh dealing with a number of issues, that we were able to meet the intent of the law to assume management of the Racing Commission by the deadline.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's been great. Fortunately, you came with a great racing background, so we were able to take advantage of it. Okay, well, that's great. And as soon as the weather is reliably good, we'll be out there with you checking out
Okay.
the facilities.
Yeah, I would like to arrange to do that. I think it'd be helpful to us all to go to those facilities.
Right, I mean, I think it's
We'll make
crucial.
arrangements for that.
Janice, maybe you help just pick a date, and we'll just go do it. Okay, gaming consultant and legal consultant, if you gentlemen would like to come back. There are a variety of steps here. Yeah. You want to introduce yourselves to the group?
Guy Michael and Carol?
Bob Carroll?
And Bill Leahy from Anderson and Krieger.
Great, welcome. Anderson Krieger is our law firm, and Michael and Carol, in conjunction with Spectrum Gaming, is our gaming consultant, to be. The first thing, I think, is the statement of work. It's been distributed to the commission. Commissioner Zuniga and I have gone over it several times. I think Commissioner McHugh reviewed it at an early stage as well. It's fully approved by the consultant. We had, so unless there are any questions about that, if there are, anybody have questions about this document? The key thing, this will be the guts of the contract, which we'll talk about in a minute. And this directs the consultant in collaboration with us to develop the work plan, which we'll also be talking about. But we don't need the work plan done. That's subsumed into the statement of work.
I guess the only thing I'd like to say, and this applies both to this contract, this statement of work, and the legal statement of work, is that these work plans are evolving documents. We're right now taking the steps of consolidating two separate work plans. That's the first thing we're going to do, and that's going to replace the separate work plans that have been discussed thus far. And the evolution's going to continue. And so there will be updated documentation as we proceed. And that's at the core of both of these contracts, that these work plans are fluid.
Right. Any other questions about this? Okay, can we have a motion to adopt well, let me just think, Commissioner Zuniga, we also We don't have the final i's dotted and t's crossed on the contract, right?
We have semblance of a draft, we have the drafts.
Okay.
I could speak to that.
Okay, yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
I drafted what I understood would derive from this statement of work into the standard form of contract, which references both this statement of work and the work plan, which also acknowledges the evolving nature of that, and stipulates the fee that was agreed to by the parties and is in accordance with the maximum set forth in the RFR. So the standard form of contract, again, which is the Commonwealth mandated contract, incorporates this statement of work by reference, and it would be sufficient to fill it out and execute it.
So
if this is approved.
Should we have so we have one motion that adopts the statement of work and directs us to execute the contract shortly hereafter?
Yes, and the motion should stipulate or clarify that as this statement of work stipulates, designates you, Mr. Chairman, as the project manager for.
Or my designee.
Or your
right,
designee,
right.
as a project manager and hence a contract manager.
Right.
The contract stipulates a contract manager. It only made sense to me that that person be the project manager that's stipulated here, but again, it could be your designee as well.
Okay. And the amount is $500,000, which was the maximum amount that would be split, I believe, equally 50-50 between the two firms, between Spectrum and Michael and Carroll.
That's correct. And the termination date or duration, if you will, does stipulate the later of the 16 weeks stipulated in the work plan or the satisfactory completion and acceptance of the deliverables, some of which will be ironed out in the work plan. But that is by acceptance of the commission in full, not just the project manager.
Right.
That's something that I wanted to clarify.
Right, that's important. Basically, this is for the public, this is a 16-week project to write a comprehensive strategic plan for the work of the commission going forward, while also during that 16 weeks beginning to do a fair amount of the work of the commission. And we do have a copy of the present draft, which we're going to be talking about for members of the press if they want it. Present draft of the work plan, which is the essence of this project. You want to put a motion on the table to do those two steps?
Sure. I move that the statement of work as drafted between the parties, the three parties, two consultants on the gaming commission, be approved, and that this commission give authority to Chairman Crosby to enter into a contract and execute a commitment of a maximum of $250,000 with each of our gaming consultants.
A second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we get to item 5B, which is the discussion that we asked the consultants to lead 2 weeks ago on the topic of can we bifurcate the RFP process to a